Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube series, and I can't get my caller to cooperate. Well, we are in 1936 today, and I think this is the penultimate 1936 video, I guess. And yeah, we'll talk about that. Where to go. So after this, there will be one more section of the speech from the 20th of January. And yeah, then we'll go elsewhere. All right, so our recap for 1915. Well, we had Dmitri filling us in on what the next operation was going to be. The next and the last, there would be a minor procedure in between to cauterize his nose, he said, and then surgery to fix a deviated septum. And we had Felix come by, and I hope that wasn't too anticlimactic for all of all of you, because you know nothing much happened. Felix appeared to be, Dmitri said, preoccupied, or what was the word he used? Absent-minded. And yeah, Dmitri didn't have a great time, and you know, thinking about that and the assumption that so many people have that they were lovers, you know, and I refuted that because I don't see any evidence of it whatsoever. But what was it then that brought them together? Well, you know, it seems to me from later diary entries, from 1917 diary entries, when Dmitri was writing to Felix from Persia and feeling very wistful, the thing that he emphasized that he missed so much about their relationship was that he could confide in Felix and that he could jam with him. So I don't know if Felix played an instrument. I think he did. If I recall correctly, Dmitri refers to the two of them playing guitars and singing gypsy music and really enjoying that. So he didn't have a lot of close male friends of his own age, and as you know, except for in his diaries, and even that only came later, he was pretty reticent, and I think had a hard time opening up to people. And so since Felix was receptive to that, I think that meant a lot to him. Anyway, we'll be meeting another one of his genuinely close male friends very soon. Okay, in 1936, we had him basically defending young Russia and defending himself. Apparently, criticism and attacks on the group had escalated. And Dmitri also refers even to abuse, meaning that, you know, as he emphasizes, the things that they were being criticized for and attacked over were very unfair, in his opinion. All right, our cast today, we only have groups of people, no individuals. And here we go with the penultimate part of the speech. We are often reproached for not drawing on the experience of older generations. The whole Young Russia party, starting with the people at the top, would be happy to learn from the older generations if there was anything to learn. But beyond the pre-revolutionary years, what is there to learn from them after 16 years of emigration? Nothing. The trouble is, there is nothing to learn from them. The Young Russia Party, a party created by our youth with a monarchical worldview, has reached its present size, piously guarding the basic traditions of the Russian past. Young Russians do not, of course, close their eyes to the obvious Russian reality, observed by the whole world and by all reasonable people, and it is to this reality they strive to apply the historical tradition they have preserved. There are some people who severely censure us simply out of bad faith and bias. We are not going to change the minds of people like that. When we sing the national anthem, these detractors claim it's just a screen to cover up our supposedly real views. When the sacrificial acts of Young Russia Party members are visible to all, these same evil tongues try to prove that that's also just a cover for the money we receive from Moscow. I don't consider it necessary to respond to such criticism, but to those who, without understanding the essence of our movement, decry the mistakes we make, I would like to say, without listening to us, you oppose us. Without knowing us, you criticize us. Without understanding us, you attack us. Attacking us is the only thing you do. You can only pick on us. So far, we've received nothing from you but personal abuse that often defies basic decency. If we were to use your own tactics, how would we perceive the activities of your high monarchist councils? What would we say about the supposed bearers of the monarchical idea? How would we judge the kind of monarchy they'd like to see in Russia? You, the members of these monarchical councils, so pitifully lamenting the past, so willing through your tears to unleash criticism on your dynasty, will you come to us? Will you explain your mysterious thoughts to us and all those who don't understand your fruitless reasoning? Do you yourselves know the essence and meaning of the monarchical principle which you undertake to protect? Do you know that the Young Russia Party is a kind of monarchist factory which has already processed thousands of people who were indifferent and even hostile to monarchy and turned them into steadfast and consistent fighters for the legitimate monarchical idea? Okay, I mean, I don't know how just this is, but I will say that it's very eloquent. It's very eloquent. It's things that I could see myself applying to different situations and quoting. And we know that Dmitri had this poetic side. There's no reason to think that it was Kazembek who was feeding him these expressions to put into his speech. It really rings true to me that it is Dmitri. So we return to this subject of the buffaloes, i.e. the older generation, those who are embracing what is definitively extinct and will become extinct themselves. This has been just so important to Dmitri going way back. I would even say before the revolution, because he was one of those who wanted a forward-looking and modernizing path forward for Russia. He was very frustrated by the fact that, even though he had influence with the Tsar, that was one thing that he could not even really talk to Nicholas about. And then we also remember, right, if you watch those videos, his experience with the Trepov group. So these were centrist, center-left, center-right, real centrists in 1921, and Dmitri was just so frustrated with them precisely because he saw that they were forming plans for Russia's future that basically were along the lines of, we'll get rid of the Bolsheviks and then we'll simply go back to the status quo before the revolution. And another thing, an aside, Dmitri was popular with the younger generation of the emigres. He genuinely was. I've read that particularly in England, but maybe in France as well, that the younger generation of the immigration looked up to him. And, Kirill was, what was he? He was several years older than Dmitri. And so Dmitri, was the youngest of the Grand Dukes at all times, unless you count Alexei, whose Grand Ducal title was overshadowed by the fact that he was the heir to the throne. So that makes sense because he was a so-called free thinker and a forward-looking man, and the youngest of the Grand Dukes that the young members of the immigration who were monarchists would sort of gravitate to him. And he's making this point, being modern doesn't mean sacrificing the past. You can revere the past, but if you're a reasonable person, a practical person, you realize that you can't turn back the clock. Very true. What does he mean by sacrificial acts? When you see the sacrificial acts, so of members of the Young Russia Party, you think that they're just covering up their Soviet proclivities, and the same when we sing the national anthem, God Save the Tsar. You know, everything we do, you think it's just covering up for the fact that, well, for the fact that you allege that we are pro-Soviet and working with the Kremlin. Okay, what sacrificial acts? I don't know. I don't know of any Young Russia members who were kidnapped by the Soviets or you know, assassinated or lost their jobs or anything like that. So if I was sitting down with the old boy today going over this, that's one of the things I would ask him. And then there's this reference to the accusation of taking money from the Kremlin. Okay. So then Dmitri offers a kind of denial, I think is what they call that nowadays. I don't consider it necessary to respond, he says. Well, were they? I hadn't thought of that, but were they? I don't know. Cause the final straw in people's tolerance of Kazembek, I'm told, including Kirill's tolerance of Kazembek, was that he was spotted meeting with a Soviet intelligence agent. What was it then? The OGPU? OPGU? I never get the orders, the numbers in the right order. I don't even know what it stands for. But anyway, it was the precursor to the KGB. And yeah, Kazembek was caught in the act of sitting down with a man. He maybe didn't realize that other people knew this man was a Soviet intelligence officer. And that was when, when Kirill and probably Dmitri too decided this has gone too far. I'm sure Dmitri was really sick of being called a Bolshevik anyway. But you can see that he's sincere in so many of the things. So Young Russia was the group that was going to embrace his own idea of reckoning with the changes in Russia and reckoning with the need to modernize. So, none of the other groups were going to do that. He refers to these so-called high monarchical councils, and we encounter that in 1921. Trying to remember what the name of the town was. I'm not even sure if it was in Austria or Germany. It was on the border. Reichenbad, I think it was called. And after Dmitri himself was in Berlin, there was this monarchist conference in Reichenbad. It was not completely, but mostly right-wing monarchists, the ones living in Germany, who tended to be, conservative. If not all of them were extremists, but plenty of them were. And some of them were associated with Aufbau, this Nazi organization. Anyway, they had this conference, and Dmitri didn't go to it. And the result of the conference was that they started this high monarchical council, and I assume that's what he's referring to. I'm not 100% sure that it still existed, but I think that's what it was. But was that what it was? Because this particular high monarchical council has obviously rejected Kirill, and it seemed like that when Dmitri didn't pass muster with the emigres in Germany, that they were then going to go on to Kirill. And I think they did, because yes, Ducky had donated to Aufbau and was pro German fascism. And so yeah, that was probably the same group as had been formed at the Reichenbad conference in 1921. All right. I love this line. This is one that I would definitely consider quoting. Without listening to us, you oppose us. Without knowing us, you criticize us. Without understanding us, you attack us. Not only in the context of groups, I also think that each of us personally would like to say that so many times when someone is, treating us unfairly, making assumptions. Oh, my poor dog, he's got a bad cough. I don't know if you heard that or not. Anyway, well said, old boy. Very eloquent. Then he refers to the personal abuse that defies decency. Yeah, I'd like to ask him about how he defines decency. I suppose that it's just, these kind of blind and vicious attacks are indecent, particularly when the people haven't asked to sit down and talk to you about these things. Personal abuse. Well, he doesn't mean it that in that way, but I think that all of this was very easy for Dmitri to project onto young Russia what he was experiencing himself. They really, really hurt him, these accusations. You can tell that. They really hurt him, and he tends to respond to that by being angry and by being depressed. So that's what we have here. Very interesting, this reference to a monarchist factory. Is this supposed to interest the proletariat? It's an interesting turn of phrase. I'm not necessarily going to say that this one is eloquent because, talking about a factory that's processing people, that, that's a little off-putting, isn't it? He might have rethought that one. Okay. What do we have next time? Well, we have the angry conclusion to this angry speech. That's when we return to 1936. In the next video, it will be 1915, and we'll have a really interesting conversation with Paul, with Grand Duke Paul, Dmitri's father, about the war. And we'll also have this issue of romance in Maria. She was an eligible bachelorette at that time, I guess, if you weren't put off by the fact that she was a divorcee. And apparently she wasn't she would get married in 1917, and so she was kind of on the market. She wasn't opposed to finding a new husband. Anyway, thank you, so many of you, for watching the previous video with Felix Yusupos mentioned. Please come back for the next one, even though he won't be in it. And I hope to see you then. Bye.